Hello and welcome to our webcast for June 9, 2017. My name is Christian Debré and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide and euthanasia and other ending of life practices that discriminates against people with disabilities. Today's topics: Dr. Harvey Schipper, victim of the third rail of the assisted suicide debate. And the second one is frequently asked questions.
Okay.
To talk about it, Amy Hasbrook.
Okay. All right. Dr. Harvey Schipper, victim of the third rail of the assisted suicide debate. Last month, we announced the formation of 3 academic panels to study potential expansion of Canada's euthanasia and assisted suicide program to include mature minors, people with mental illness, and people with dementia.
Yeah. People with disability and child.
Right.
That's the way you should look at it.
Right. They hadn't even passed the law and they were already thinking about expanding it. And that was part of the law. So they appointed 3 committees to look at it. Dr. Harvey Schipper was selected to chair the Committee on Advanced Directives for People with Dementia, bringing his experience as a doctor and lawyer to the task.
So he was highly qualified.
Yes, highly qualified and expert. Upon his appointment on April 28th, Dying with Dignity Canada made a blog post on its website and Facebook page criticizing the appointment of someone they considered to be a strident opponent of assisted suicide. Schipper's sin: linking assisted suicide to the Nazi euthanasia program.
Which is just a link. It's a proposition. It's an idea.
Right, exactly.
And it was a debate at this time before the law.
Right.
When there was at least a beginning of the debate.
Right, exactly. It was during the debate over the law, and he was expressing his opinion, and he talked about it, which we'll mention in a minute. The blog post was picked up the same day by political reporter Joan Bryden, whose opinion piece attacking Schipper ran in the Toronto Star and Metro News, among others. So the same day it came out on the Dying with Dignity website, she picked it up and it ran in Metro News and such. And then other people started piling on, adding their 2 cents.
Yeah.
Basically saying the same thing. He shouldn't be on the committee because he's too opinionated.
Which we oppose, because in a committee like that, what you should look at is a kind of balance. You could not be neutral. Neutrality is not a thing who exists in this committee.
Right.
But the way to achieve the closest possible thing is to balance the committee.
Right, and there are plenty of people on that committee who support assisted suicide and who advocated for assisted suicide.
Yes.
So having one person on the committee who opposes is just creating a balance of opinion.
Yeah. And who just resigned because there was advocating for assisted suicide.
Right. Because of the controversy, Dr. Schipper stepped down from his post as committee chair. So he didn't want the controversy to distract from the work of the committee. So he stepped down, he gave up his position as chair. In a 2014 controversy, so that was during the debate, Dr. Schipper stated, quote, "Similar arguments about relieving suffering were used by the Nazis to justify first exterminating the weakened and disabled, then the mentally ill."
Which is 100%
True.
and real in its history. And there is many ways to look at it.
Right. It's absolutely true what he said, and it can be documented.
And it doesn't treat anybody as Nazi. He
Right.
said that
Right.
there is some resemblance with what it was happened many years before.
Right, with the arguments being used. No one challenged the truth of Schipper's statement, only his drawing the connection between the eugenic values that drove the Nazi T4 program and the modern movement for euthanasia and assisted suicide. So just because he drew that link, people attacked him and said, you know, he shouldn't be talking about Nazis.
Even if the link was true.
Right, exactly. And for us who are advocates, the Nazi euthanasia program has always been the third rail for opponents of assisted suicide. Touch it and you die. You lose all credibility. And we've known that since I've been working in this field, which is 20 years. And, you know, you just, unfortunately, even though it's very related, even though they're the same justifications, you can't talk about it, because as soon as you talk about it, people say, oh, you're being paranoid, and you lose all your credibility. So you can't tell that truth.
Even if it's true.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
However, the propaganda used to sell the German people on the Nazi eugenic euthanasia program bears a striking resemblance to news stories we find in the media today. Researcher Dick Zabsi describes the central story of the 1941 film Ich Klag an, which translates as I accuse. Quote, a woman was losing control over her own body as she lost ground to a degenerative neurological condition. Her husband and another close male friend looked on as she begged for help to release her from her suffering, but the law would not allow them to give her mercy. Finally, one brave man defies the law and allows her to die.
Nazi man.
Right. Yeah, her husband allows her to die with dignity. And that's the propaganda film that they produced. And at the trial,
which is exactly the argument that
right,
the advocacy for assisted suicide do today.
Right. And in the propaganda film, the husband says at the trial, I accuse the law which hinders doctors and judges in their task of helping people. I confess I have delivered my wife from her sufferings, following her wishes. My life and the lives of all people who suffer the same fate as my wife depends on your verdict. Now pass your verdict.
Again, it's exactly what is the argument now for the advocacy to the assisted suicide.
Right. And it was used to justify the killing of 275,000 disabled people by the Nazis.
So this is the link. So we doesn't treat anybody as a Nazi.
Right.
We say there is a resemblance, there is historical fact that we should look at because there is a danger.
Right.
That's just what we said.
Right. The ability to recall this historical use of propaganda would seem to make Dr. Schipper an excellent candidate to lead a committee deciding on whether advanced directives should be applied where a person has dementia. After all, as George Santayana cautioned, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
This is the history of the world.
Right. If you don't learn from the past, you're going to repeat it. And people who are saying, who make it impossible to talk about the past, about the Nazi connection, are
make sure that we may do the same.
Right, exactly.
It's not an impossibility. We doesn't say that we will and we are Nazi and so on.
Right.
We say there is a danger and we should look closely at it.
Right, exactly. Okay, we're on to frequently asked questions now. Here's a question. These suicide requests do not arise from mental illness. They are fully informed, competent people who are making a rational choice to avoid torturous pain and suffering. Shouldn't we treat them differently from those with mental illness? And that's a question that we hear a lot. So here's our response. The idea of rational suicide has been promoted by a few researchers, but has not been accepted by any of the major mental health associations. So the professionals as a group don't accept that idea.
Yeah.
Surveys that show support for rational suicide may, in fact, reveal more about disability bias among mental health professionals than about the reasons people want to die. So,
Rational suicide doesn't exist.
right,
A suicide is a suicide, and it should be at least try to prevent it.
right. And whenever they talk about rational suicide, the first thing they talk about is that the person has a disability. And
People with disability like their life,
right,
and disability is not the point at all.
right. Having a disability, if you acquire a disability, you're going to have to go through a period of grieving, and that's true of any setback or loss in life. But the fact of having a disability does not mean that your life is over. It's not a tragedy. It just means you
it
have
may be
different-
a tragedy when you lose it, because the grief is very, very
Right.
difficult sometimes. But doesn't mean that your life is over.
Right.
Yet you still have a life, and you're still able to do a different thing, and your life would be different, not over.
Right, and the idea that just because you have a disability, your suicide is rational, that is absolutely not true. In the latest version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM-5, released by the American Psychiatric Association in 2012, assessments for suicidality factor in whether a person has a disabling condition as a potential cause. In other words, the presence of a disability is a reason to offer suicide prevention.
Yes, and it's a more suitable reason to offer it. It should be done by every group who fights suicide, which is not now, and we will pay for it.
Right, exactly. We've Not Dead Yet in the United States, and we at Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet, have done outreach to suicide prevention organizations, and they just refuse to basically listen. They say it's a different thing when somebody has a disability.
Yeah, that's a suicide.
Right.
Sorry, every suicide is a suicide,
Right.
because handicapped people have exactly the same reason as non-handicapped people to suicide. So if it's good for one, it should be good for the other.
Right.
If it's not, it's discrimination.
Right. There are social factors that can cause suicidal feelings, such as isolation, bullying, poverty, violence, devaluation by society, institutionalization, identity issues, cultural and language deprivation, substance abuse, and others. These are all associated with the discrimination of people with disabilities, as well as other groups such as First Nations people, LGBT people, veterans, and other disenfranchised groups.
So those groups should fight against assisted suicide,
Right.
which are not yet on.
Well,
They doesn't link their things directly on it. And some say, yes, we will fight, but they are not yet there, most of them.
but what's more important is that we recognize that those problems of those groups come from discrimination,
Yes.
and that those problems cause suicidality, and we
Yes.
as a society support suicide prevention for those groups,
Not
not
assisted
disabled,
suicide.
right,
Yeah.
not assisted suicide. We don't say, we don't go to First Nations,
Say you should suicide
Communities
because you're poor, you're isolated,
right,
you have a different addict problem,
Right.
so you should suicide.
right,
No, you shouldn't.
right, exactly. We don't try to make it easier for them to commit suicide. We try to prevent their suicides, and that's what we should be doing with people with disabilities. In addition, people with disabilities and elders are subject to high rates of abuse and domestic violence, another factor that contributes to suicide. And there are lots and lots of studies that show that disabled people are more than twice as likely as non-disabled people to be victims of crime and abused by caretakers.
Just look at newspaper.
Right. You'll see very frequently there are reports of abuse in institutions, and even people with personal care attendants are sometimes abused by those attendants, by
There is,
family members as well.
yeah, there are so many cases of abuse so many reported that it doesn't need even to need us to put you a case in front of you. There's thousands of abuse case anywhere in the news every year.
Right. And that can lead to suicide. People who are living in abusive situations can be.
Yeah, if you have the choice between to be abused and death, sometimes your choice could be death.
Right. Studies done of requests for assisted suicide, and this is by Carol Gill, who's a psychologist and has studied this quite a bit, found that reasons given by people requesting assisted suicide are similar to those given by non-disabled suicidal people. As well, people asking for assisted suicide are likely to be influenced by the same suicide prevention measures which are effective for non-disabled suicidal people. So it's the same reasons, and they're subject to they're likely to respond to the same treatments as other people, as non-disabled people.
Because there is no difference in the head of everybody on earth. This is the same thing.
Right.
Disabled or not.
Right, exactly. The reasons are similar. Finally, when people with disabilities don't have a choice as to where and how to live, the idea of a choice to die is an illusion. It's not that people are incapable of making a choice, which is what the lawyer for the disabled people asking for assisted suicide is always saying. He's accusing us of saying, you don't trust disabled people to make choices. That's not what we're saying. We're saying people don't have choices.
Yeah, or the choice is strict. Okay, that's basically what happened in life right now.
Right, exactly.
Your choice could not be a free choice. It's a obligated choice between two bad things, not a good and a bad.
Right, exactly. Right. So it's not that we're incapable of making a choice. It's they simply have no viable choice to make. Okay. So if you want more information about the topics that we discuss here, you can go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet.
Don't forget, we need your question, and we need, again, even more, your testimony.
Yeah.
Please communicate with us. We will use your testimony, and make sure that it will be applied to the debate.
Yeah, exactly. You can also visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can send us an email at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks for being with us, and thanks to Christian for helping out. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.